In proving congruent triangles, it is a must to recall the different postulates, theorems, axioms, definitions, which is related to congruent triangles, because they will serve as a basis in our reasoning for each statement. So let us recall some of the terms. Bisector means uh, it is one that bisects or divides something into two equal parts. For example, there is a segment AB. If it measures 10 and it is bisected by another segment which is XY, so this AB will be divided into two equal parts. So AY is 5 and YB is also 5. When we say reflexive property, so that is something which is equal to itself. For example, AB is equal to itself, AB. When we say addition postulate, if A is equal to B, therefore A plus C is equal to B plus C. Then the vertical angles are the pairs of angle or opposite angles made by two intersecting lines. For example, we have two lines here. So this angle and the other angle are called a pair of vertical angles, and they are said to be congruent. So if the left side angle measures 30 degrees, the right side angle is 30 degrees. So whatever the measure of the angle here on top, that is congruent to the measure of the angle below. Then Cpctc means corresponding parts of a congruent triangles are congruent. So if there are two, let's say congruent triangles which is in the same orientation, so this tells us that the corresponding parts of these two corresponding triangles are always congruent. So the corresponding parts are, for example, the red angles, they are congruent, the green angles are congruent, the black angles are congruent because they are corresponding. Similarly, the sides, purple sides, yellow sides, and blue sides are congruent because they are corresponding. Okay, so let's start. So let's say we have a given triangle ABC. Then there is a segment AD that divides the big triangle. Then we have here an information that AB, so this leg, is congruent to AC, to the other leg. And AD, so this segment here, it bisects CB at point D. So it divides, this segment divides this big triangle into two small triangles, the triangle ADC and triangle ADB. So we're going to prove that angle C is congruent to angle B. So we are referring to this angle here. We're going to prove that they are congruent. So we will use a two-column proof. One column is the statements and the other column is the sets of our reasons. So our first statement is AB is congruent to AC. Why did we write this statement? The reason is that is in our given. So everyone will accept it because it is in the given. Then we can put a mark that this AB is congruent to this leg AC. Then we have another statement, segment AD bisects segment CB at D. So for what reason? Our reason is that is also one of the given. So we can mark our given figure here. From this statement, we can conclude that if AD bisects CB at D, therefore, this CD here is congruent to DB. And our reason is because that is the definition of segment bisector, that a bisector divides the segment into two equal parts. Therefore, CD and DB are equal. So we're going to put a mark. Then from this figure, we can say that AD is congruent to AD. For what reason? That is by reflexive property. Notice that this big triangle here is divided into two triangles, the yellow triangle and the blue triangles, wherein they share in one side, which is the side AD. So of course, we know that AD is congruent to itself because this AD shared by these two triangles. So we can mark this side AD, which is congruent to itself. Now, from this given figure here and from these statements, we can say that this triangle ADC is congruent to triangle ADB. And what is our reason? That is by side postulate, which says that if the three corresponding sides of two triangles are congruent, then the two triangles are congruent also. So AC and AB are corresponding, they are congruent. CD and DB are corresponding sides, they are also congruent. AD and AD are also corresponding and are congruent. Therefore, the two triangles are congruent. But wait, we're going to prove that angle C is congruent to angle B. So since the two triangles are congruent, of course, angle C is also congruent to angle B. For what reason? According to the Cpctc, or the corresponding parts of congruent triangles are also congruent. Because the yellow and blue triangles are congruent, all its corresponding parts are also congruent, including the angle C and angle B that we want to prove. For our next given, so we have here a quadrilateral ABCD wherein AC and BD bisect each other at point E. So we have two diagonals, they intersected at point E. We are going to prove that ang triangle AED is congruent to triangle CEB. So the triangles that we are referring are the blue and yellow triangles, AED and CEB. So we're going to use a two-column proof. So for our first statement, AC or segment AC and segment BD bisect each other at E. And our reason, that is in our given. Now, from this statement here, we can say that AE is congruent to EC. So we are referring to this side and this side. They are congruent because that's according to the definition of segment bisector. Since AC is bisected by BD, so AC is cut into two equal parts. Therefore, they are congruent with each other. So we had a mark that says that they are congruent. Then from the same statement here, we can also say that DE is congruent to EB. So we are referring to this DE, this segment here, and the other segment EB. They are congruent because DB is also bisected by AC, which divide this BD into two equal parts. That's the definition of segment bisector. So we'll put a mark that DE and EB are congruent. Now, looking at our figure, notice that AC and BD, those diagonals intersect each other and creates a vertical angles. So we can say that angle AED, so we are referring to this angle, congruent to CEB. So what is our reason? Because they are vertical angles. We just learned that vertical angles are congruent. So from these informations that we have in our statements, that is enough for us to conclude that the two triangles are congruent. Triangle AED and triangle CEB are congruent. For what reason? That is by side-angle-side postulate. Because the corresponding sides are congruent, the corresponding angles are congruent, and the other two corresponding sides are congruent. Therefore, the two triangles are congruent by side-angle-side postulate.